Secularism, we've been described by United Nations Committee as being the second most secular nation on the planet. I find that difficult to reconcile when we look at our census figures, but assuming it's true, and anecdotally as you go around, there is a very high degree of secularism in the country. And that's a challenge, and it's not a challenge that's unique to us. I'm sure it probably exists here too, maybe to a lesser extent, but it will be an increasing factor in your country as well as ours. And so what it means is that I spend a lot of time in interfaith dialogues, and perhaps if I just use this story as an illustration and then I can leave it. When I started the job 7 years ago and I received an invitation to attend an interfaith dialogue, most of the evangelical leaders who I consulted said, don't waste your time. And because it was occurring on a weekend and I thought, well, it's my time, I'll go anyway and see what happens. I was shocked after hearing a presentation by a very interesting presentation. I didn't agree with it all, but I was very shocked when we then broke into small groups to discuss a list of questions, and every question said, because we worship the same God, how should we deal with media? Because we worship the same God, how should we deal with government, and so on. And I looked around my group, which had a couple of Muslims and Hindu and Buddhist and so on, and they were all animated on this conversation. And finally the chairwoman looked across at me and saw my name badge and said, Glyn, you haven't said anything. And I said, well, how do you join the conversation when you don't agree with the premise of the questions? And it absolutely shocked everybody. This conversation stopped. And I thought to myself, how come these conversations have been going on for 30 years? And they've reached a point where they all think we're worshipping the same God. Well, the short answer is evangelicals haven't been going along. And so when we absent ourselves from these discussions in the public domain, it will go its course and it won't be the way of the kingdom of God. So I've taken that really as a personal challenge, and I've engaged seriously with the Human Rights Commission in New Zealand, that's been putting out a series of documents on interfaith religion in workplace, religion in schools, religion in the media. About one a year they churn them out. I've managed to get myself onto the committee that dialogues with these different interfaith groups. The first two we didn't have much success, but that was a couple of years when I was building relationships and building credibility. I'm very pleased to say that in the last two, the religion in the workplace and religion in media, we've actually had a significant result. And the last document on the workplace is pretty well largely one we wrote. So that's a good outcome for Evangelical Church.